Hi, Laura. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me, Julie. I appreciate it. It's good to be here today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our chat. I think we have a lot in common in many ways. And I think a lot of our listeners actually will resonate with what we're going to talk about today. So I'm looking forward to it. If you would share a little bit about what you're currently doing with your IHP certification, and then we'll back it up and talk about what you were doing before that, kind of maybe how you found IHP, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And currently, I teach a course on muscle testing, which I started in IHP and then got my health coaching certification, and then I built out a practice of health coaches, and then I sort of like tacked on the muscle testing piece and sort of came up with my own method for doing that, based off of sort of what I had experienced. And so I currently have a practice of health coaches that help other women. So they utilize the information that I've taught them with muscle testing and what I teach them in my course. And then also, I sort of manage the practice. I don't see clients as much anymore, but I did for 3 years. So
that's great. And Are they all IHPs, or are they kind of, some of them aren't, and just
some of them aren't, and some of them are. Some of them are NTPs. A couple of them are IHPs. So it's a mix. But yeah, it is. It's a wonderful certification that I think opens a lot of doors for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. What were you doing prior to that? Were you kind of always in the health and wellness space?
No, I was a finance major, and like in the latter part of my career, I was a Capital One and doing something kind of unrelated to finance. I was a project manager and I was a delivery. We don't need to get into the details of it, but it was burning me out majorly. Nothing against Capital One, but I just think I knew I wasn't in alignment. I had suffered a lot of health issues. And had been consistently trying to come back from that, but I just didn't have the time and the energy to dedicate to researching and trying to figure out what was going on. I was really just using food. That was the only thing, taking a couple supplements here and there, but I didn't really, and that was for probably 4 years leading up to me quitting my job a week before COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, a week before the country shut down. Yeah.
Well, not so bad timing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could have been worse, right? I mean, I ended up obviously being there with my kids and not having to work. But my husband's business, we own an oyster farm and restaurants shut down. So it was a special time, but we survived it. And look, we're thriving now. So
yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love oysters.
Yeah, I know. They're so amazing. And everyone always asks if we eat them all the time. And the answer actually is no, but I can get them whenever I want, but it's a whole thing, and our kids haven't quite acquired the taste for them yet either.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think part of like the nostalgia, or like what I love about them is I'm usually out at a restaurant. It's just me and my husband, and they're cold, and I haven't shucked them myself, and I haven't made dinner, and it's quiet.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And I think that is part of it. And for me, when we drive down to that area, where his farm is, there's a little place on the water and we can get them. And so, yeah, it is definitely my preferred experience and method is, not in my kitchen.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would love to kind of dive in a little bit about, so before we, started recording, we were talking about, what you were doing currently with your certification. And you had shared that you have an almost 1-year-old. So you had a baby almost a year ago. Yep. And how it kind of changed a little bit of what you've been doing in the last year or so. And I thought it would be great for us to chat a little bit about how really there's a huge benefit to what we do if you do end up wanting to have children, right? There's a lot of women who become IHPs before they have kids. Yeah. And maybe they don't think like, "Ooh, how am I going to do this? How am I not going to do this? Once I have a baby," but it is a career that allows you to kind of press the pause button if you want to press the pause button and start it when you want to start it. And you don't have to do this whole like 9 to 5 back, 5 days a week, if you were kind of in corporate America, right? So there's lots of benefits, but I would love to kind of get your overall experience in the last year with, what it looked like to kind of be postpartum. I believe the postpartum period lasts a full year. I think conventional medicine puts us in a 6-week category of like, we have our 6-week checkup and they're like, oh, you're great. You can, have intercourse again, you can work out and you're good. Right. And that's like the measure of everything.
Yeah. And this was such a unique experience for me. I have 3 kids, a 5-year-old boy, a 4-year-old boy, and then an almost 1-year-old girl. And you literally just took the words out of my mouth, because with the boys, I did not have any postpartum depression or really any anxiety. We settled into things pretty well. Everybody was sleeping. And honestly, by all measures, she was an easier baby, but I struggled with postpartum anxiety for the first time in my life. And I, don't think I realized it, especially being health minded. And I know there is a root cause to all of that. And I didn't go on medication, but it lingered and it lingered. And honestly, it took a long time for it to resolve. And I was really, really thankful that I did not have to be on at some type of job 9 to 5. I have a wonderful director of operations that was my right-hand woman through the entire process. And, even if you don't have someone like that, and I just happened to be at that point in my career, and I'm very much a feeler. So I can't say that I did the best job of planning the whole, exit, not exit, but, pause really. But we worked together and it was totally possible and doable. And I just took the time that I needed. And once I got over this idea that I had to show up a certain way, and I got over this fear of rejection, really, I think that's what it was. And a big part of that, I think for a lot of us, is tied to social media, and how am I showing up on social media? And I just started to explore all these limiting beliefs that I had around how this needed to look and how I needed to function. And I realized that I was actually the one putting all this pressure on myself to grow my business by X in this year and do this and do that. And it was really, truly not out of necessity, more of just this programming that I have from, way back when, where do better, be better, hustle, grind, and once I reframed that and really took a look in the mirror and realized that I was putting a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure on myself, and I let go of that, I really started to just enjoy the time home with my daughter. And I was able to dive into some of the health things that I was experiencing. And as soon as I took my foot off the gas of the business and actually redirected to myself, all of my anxiety and stuff, and I was able to address some pretty serious mold exposure that I had. And I sort of realized that I was neglecting myself. So, it's amazing that you have this flexibility. And I think it can be and look however you want it to look. And there's no right or wrong. And I think that, people view being an entrepreneur as risky, but I don't know. I mean, I could never go back to working for someone. And there's just so much value in it, in my opinion, and it's not for everybody, obviously, but for me, I could never go back to the other way. And I'm just so grateful to be able to, like you said, in periods of feeling uninspired, because I'm suffering so severely from depression and anxiety from postpartum, I was able to take a pause. And I mean, I really feel like I was surviving at times during this postpartum period, which I haven't even been that open about with, my Instagram community. And I finally feel like I'm reconnecting to my authentic self. So it really served a purpose for me in a lot of ways, being able to hit that pause button to do some really deep self-exploration.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think one thing that is so overlooked when it comes to our culture is that postpartum period and kind of that like toxic boss babe culture of like, you can be it all, right? Which I love and respect, because I know that there's many women who like financially couldn't press a pause button, right? And like they have to continue working to make financial ends meet. So there's that. But from the lens of like, do it all, be it all, our systems were never meant to handle that. Like if we were in the full like feminist type energy, right? Like we are just nurturers where, yes, we can be bosses and entrepreneurs, and that's amazing. But there's seasons where that works and where it doesn't. And having a third child, when you have a 4 and a 5-year-old, is probably not the season where your nervous system can withstand all of that stimulation with your kids, and then also like run a successful business full throttle at the same time.
No, I mean, you're so right. And it's funny because, I have, I have a really close relationship with with God. And it's funny because I feel like whenever my intuition knows what I'm supposed to be doing and I go against it is when the resistance happens. And I kept trying to find childcare and it kept not working out. And it was like 3 and 4 situations like this. And to the point where I finally just said, Uncle, like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I am not supposed to be moving my business forward. I am not supposed to be grinding. Like, this is a bonding period where I am supposed to be with my child, and I need to drop into that feminine matriarch, that's my role right now. And I need to be honest with myself about the season that I'm in, because a lot of people do, I think, and society, unnecessarily puts these pressures on us that we can do it all. And it was really important for me to really explore why I felt like I needed to do that. And what were the like patterns and limiting beliefs coming up in my life, making me feel that like I wasn't, everything else in my life is replaceable. I'm not replaceable as a mother. And this is where I need to be right now. And once I really settled into that, I feel like I became creative again. I really started tapping into my, the ability to receive again, which is your femininity. And I could not access that when I was stuck in my masculinity.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that too, at least I've experienced this, without going into like major personal details, like with my marriage too, like when I'm trying to like grind and be like all the, like the things, right. The like provider, my husband has a great job and he financially provides, but when I'm like business oriented and like and I kind of like let all of the stuff of like mom and wife and all that stuff, take a back seat, right. It's this like energy that's totally colliding. And like the kids, my kids at least can, see when I'm doing work that I love, that's like bringing me joy. And when I'm like when it's too much, right. And
right.
And I think, it has to be a beautiful balance. And I think the point I was trying to make in the beginning is like having a certification that allows you to create the balance, right? It's hard to see what is the balance that's right for me. That's like the part that will be different for everybody. Right.
Yeah.
But having something that allows you to create a balance, like maybe making a course that then has this like evergreen ability to give back to you and you don't have to hustle to be in front of a client, client after client.
100%. Yeah, you're spot on. And I experienced the same exact thing with my husband. The second I go into that masculine, driven grind, hustle, boss babe. I mean, it's immediate collision between the two of us. It's the exact same thing that you said. And it's funny because he's very energetically sensitive and he picks up on it immediately. And it's like, we're at war and it's just not good, And so it is. And I feel very blessed that IHP led me down this path and, really felt like I was able to take my strengths as a health coach and the other things that I did really well and parlay it into something like a course. And that is, I have been offering it on an evergreen basis, but I'm working now on building out sales funnels and all of those things to really kind of like dial it in, and really take what I feel like is unique about me and work on that. And just because I hit the pause button doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean anything, and like you said, a lot of people, I think it is hard because they may not be able to sustain that. But for me, I was really thankful and blessed that I had a practice that was sort of like running itself, and my course being evergreen, at that point it just happened to work itself out for me. And I think in a lot of ways, if you do trust, sometimes you'll shock yourself, right? That it almost, it's just never as bad as we've envisioned it in our heads. And I think it's just, I wouldn't say they're irrational fears because everyone's fears are valid, but it's usually just we've painted a story or a picture and it just doesn't end up that way. And I was so grateful to be able to have the ability to just take a step back and take a pause. And, we moved. I mean, we moved. We had a huge, we had a mold remediation a couple of years ago, and I just didn't feel great. And so we moved, and that was such a blessing, but I needed time. I mean, I'm watching her, and then have two other kids that have drop-offs at two different places. The morning routine, which I'm responsible for because my husband's gone, takes 4 hours. I mean, I get up at 6:30, I get home at 9, or 5:30 and get home at 9. If I want to get anything done, I'm getting up pretty early. And when I just felt like it started to feel so forced, again, I just don't believe we were created to have to live like this. It's supposed to be a little bit more effortless. And if it's not, then, where am I making it worse than it needs to be? Or where am I just not surrendering to the season that I'm in?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's that what you just said, surrendering to the season that you're in. And because it can look different for everybody, right? Like, so maybe you're not having kids, but maybe you're at the point where you're an IHP and you're 47 and you're taking care of an elderly parent, right? Totally. Like our seasons evolve and they change, and we kind of can get, or at least I do, I'm going to speak for myself.
Yeah.
I can kind of get in this feeling of like, oh my God, how do I navigate this forever? Well, it's not going to last forever. I'm not going to have a 7-month-old forever. Eventually, the baby will be somewhere longer, and I can devote more time, and I won't feel like I'm taking myself away from what he needs. And as mothers, I think we can kind of get like in this place of the anxiety of the now. Kind of, I can project it forward and be like, this is just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this forever, and it doesn't last forever. And if we can just kind of live in the moment in a sense and allow ourselves to kind of, like you said, surrender to the season that we have at this point, we likely are going to be much better version of ourselves for ourselves, but then the people that we're kind of showing up for, whether it's our clients, our kids, our, spouses, our families. And yeah,
I totally agree. And my husband does a really good job of reminding me that this is a point in time. This is a point in time. This is not in perpetuity. Like, it's not going to be like this forever. And one day you're going to, and I know it sounds so cliche, but one day I'm going to be, I had visions of being home with her. And it's like, again, I just allowed this masculine energy to take over. And I kept trying to force all these things. And it's been such a blessing. And even my husband's so happy, which sounds weird. He's happy that I'm home with her, and he likes to come home and she's home. And, but I look at him and he can't take a season off. He is going there. He doesn't have to be there every day, but he's a team of people and all these things. But he can't take seasons of life off. I can. It's such a beautiful thing. That's ultimately why I chose something like this. It chose me in a sense with my health issues, and I, in deep prayer and surrender about it. Like, I just felt like I was living so inauthentically, and that this was clearly something I was supposed to give back. And again, seasons, right? Like with COVID, it's not postpartum, but I was a mom then and I had 2 kids. And even though I had a lot of health, like way worse health issues then, my husband couldn't just take off. He was pivoting, trying to, figure out how to keep revenue coming in. And, he had to work. And I felt really, really blessed that I could be what my family needed in that moment, which, I mean, what a gift.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, being honest with what what your role is, what your responsibility is, being able to, have some sort of like vision for where, and what you kind of had mentioned earlier was that, you can press the pause button, but that doesn't mean you have to stay paused forever, and you can come back to it.
Yes.
When the season changes, right? Or when it feels like you have more wherewithal to be creative because you're not overstimulated with, 3 kids, 24 hours a day. There's no room for creativity when there's a lot of that, nonstop go, 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 go.
Well, yeah. And that's actually the reason I left my last job. I mean, I was in, however many years ago that was now at this point, 4 or 5, but I literally was in 12 meetings a day, and they would build in, there was no time in between. You just went from meeting to meeting to meeting. And it was just okay that you were 5 or 10 minutes late, and you would just sit down and take it all in and be on Slack and like 17 other channels and yeah. And so it was intense, and I was not cut out for it. It's a great place to work, but I was so overstimulated by the end of the day. I came home and I had no thoughts of my own. I came right home to cook dinner and I was snapping at my husband. I was snapping at my kids, and I just knew it was not in alignment, with how I was supposed to be spending my time. It was just way too aggressive, for me. And I thought that's what I wanted. It's just so silly looking back on it, but that's life is just this, in my opinion, series of figuring out what you don't want to do until you kind of figure out what you do want to do. And it's all just growing, growing in who you're really supposed to be and show up as. And that's really what that was for me. But I'm just really, you do really need to have that solitude and space to access creativity, in my opinion. You can't be overstimulated. I commend you for staying home. And I still have help like a couple days a week, with her for a few hours a day, just so I can get a little bit done. And just, again, surrendering to that, and what I get done is what I get done, and not overthinking it, not trying to start like, two of my kids will be in the same place in July, and that'll open up a lot of time for me, but I'm not trying to start any new crazy ventures right now. I'm just, doing what I need to do and sort of going where my creativity takes me right now. And then just kind of like leave it, just knowing that, again, this is a season, and it's where I'm supposed to be.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that trust, right, ultimately kind of, energetically can lead us, to the next best thing, when we're not kind of constantly, in that like fear-based mentality, and we're just kind of like open and trusting, like the next kind of, I always say, like, take the next step and the path appears. Being able, I couldn't
agree with you more on that. I mean, I think you become magnetic when you're able to like show up as your true, like, authentic self. And it's impossible to tap into that when you're so stressed out, whether it's momming or whatever, whether you're putting too much pressure on yourself because of like your current work situation. I really do agree with you there that you attract the next thing. It just sort of comes.
Well, because we are literally energy. Everybody's energy.
Yeah, energy.
Everything is energy. And when like we feel tight and closed off and, rigid, there's like that expansion and attraction, like it can't actually happen.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
From a physics standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if other, coaches are listening and they're like, oh, I wonder, like, was there one thing that she, so like new moms or women that maybe like think that they want to have kids, do you have like a tip as far as it could be a business tip, it could be just a mom tip. If you were to kind of say like, this is what I would do to either, make sure you set yourself up for being able to take time off or to kind of create some sort of success or grace to have with yourself. What would your...
Yeah. I mean, I can share, I'm more of a feeler, but I can share a couple tactical things and then just maybe some, more like of the emotional side of things. From a tactical standpoint, I really think that having a course of some sort and that it doesn't necessarily need to be evergreen, but, run it a couple times and plan for that maternity leave, or having a practice where, there's some residual income that you get, or even, some network marketing stuff, which, I think if you have a social media following, lean into that. I know someone who has a wonderful Instagram account actually called No Shame Sales Game that I think really helps people lean into embracing network marketing. So there's just so many different avenues that you can go if you're planning a, maternity leave, and try not to close yourself off to what that looks like. And obviously, ideally would be that you have a evergreen course and you've got an email list and you've got people just coming into that funnel and using your free resource, and then you're converting them over email. But that's like so far down the road for someone that, in my opinion, it takes some resources, and it's probably a 5 to 10 year plan. But I think it's doable for anyone. It's just, planning a little bit for it. And I mean, you do have 9 months, from the time that you find out that you're pregnant. So just figuring out what you want to do and then trying to accommodate that and just trying to figure out what you need. I mean, we just, I didn't try to do anything, lifestyle wise extravagant. We just planned for what we needed. And then I actually had planned to teach the course not in like when she was 5 months. So I somehow managed that. It was a little bit of a blur. But I taught it live. And so again, but it's doable. I mean, all of it's doable. It's just a matter of, I would say not overthinking it and not overpressuring yourself, so that you can enjoy this time and just kind of let go of what you think you're supposed to be doing in your business and lean into what your priorities are. And I just don't think you will ever fail if you know what your priority is. And for me, that's my children and my family, and leaning into that. I just don't think you're ever going to lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that first year goes by like that.
Oh.
And as third time moms, we can kind of, right. By the time the third one comes around, how fast it goes by, how, what little things to savor, what things, you never want to forget. But if it's a first time mom listening, I mean, those are days that you just they never come back. Right. I mean, none of them really do, but that first year is such like a tender period for both the mom and the baby that, being able to nurture yourself and the baby is so important.
I mean, it is. They're so little. They're in your arms and you have so much physical connection against their bodies. And, even my husband and I went to get her up this morning and she put her head on his shoulder, and I just took that in, and thought, oh my gosh, like how much longer is she going to nestle her little head into our neck? And, it goes by so fast. I'm blinking. I mean, I literally feel like it has been the fastest year of my life. I mean, hands down. She'll be 1 in a week. Yeah. And it's, I don't know, it's flown by. And I don't think anyone should ever feel guilty for wanting to be with their family or stay home with their kids.
Yeah.
Because you never get it back.
Yes. Yeah. And for me, even though I coached, throughout my postpartum period, it was so nice to be able to say, okay, I'm only going to see, 6 clients a week instead of seeing, 15 or 20 clients a week. My husband and I, we talked about like, okay, this is like the bare minimum that you need to do for us to kind of meet X, Y, and Z. And so I did the bare minimum, but I still got to show up for clients that I absolutely loved and like have this balance, right? It allows you, but then if next week I wanted to ramp up again, I ramp up again, right? So you're able to kind of scale back or scale up in a way that, doing a more corporate setting job, you're kind of like tied to their timeline.
You absolutely are. And that you bring up some really good points in that I was able to shift my business model entirely in the way that I take one-on-one clients. I actually did this whole exercise of where am I leaking energy in my practice? Like, where am I, giving things away energetically that I probably shouldn't be, that I should be charging for? And what do I like about the way I'm working with one-on-one clients? And what do I not like? And where does it feel like I'm over giving and not getting enough? And I completely revamped the entire way that I take one-on-one clients, like completely shifted that to align with where I currently was in my life. And, a lot of that had to do with the outcomes I wanted to produce for my clients too. But I think it's really important to not just keep doing the same thing when your circumstances change, just because that's how you've done it. Like be okay with making changes that align with where you are in your life and who you are as a person and how you've evolved. And of course, like I had a major energetic house cleaning there, right? A lot of people that didn't want to pay X fell by the wayside, but I was expending a fraction of my energy on a much different type of client that I wanted to attract, right? And making more money, doing that. And it's not all about money, but it's about what is authentic for you and what aligns with where you are in your life. And again, I wanted to prioritize my family, and I just knew that I could build something around that. So that's, what I did. And to your point, if I want to go back to the old way, I can. Nothing's ever permanent.
Right. Yeah. In both directions. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If people are listening and they want to connect or find out more about you, where are all the places that you show up, social media, websites, all that stuff?
Yeah. So my website is just my name, laurajperry.com. And that's also my Instagram is laura.j.perry. So yeah, they can check it out there if they want to know more.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. This is such a great interview, and I appreciate you sharing everything you did.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Thanks, Laura.
Alrighty, bye-bye.